I have a book, 14 Secrets to a Done Dissertation. And in the book, I give people strategy on how to navigate the process. And that's the first thing I say is like, just dedicate a little bit of time every day to writing, because you literally can write a couple of pages in, say, a 30 to 60 minute time frame. Those couple of pages add up over a week. You might have 5 pages. Look at a month, 20 pages. You're at a chapter. And people don't think it can happen that fast. But I think when you add it on to, if we think those positive thoughts about writing, it kind of manifests itself in our action. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Done Dissertation Office Hours, where we talk with researchers and doctoral students about their education and dissertation journey and all the great work that they have done or plan to do with their doctoral degree. Hi, this is Dr. Ramon Goins with the Done Dissertation. I want to say thank you for tuning in to Done Dissertation Office Hours. As a special gift, I want to provide you a 10 strategies to complete your dissertation in 1 year checklist. This checklist provides strategy on how to improve your academic writing, how to navigate the dissertation process, and how to select committee members to ensure that you get through the dissertation with the least amount of headache. And as an additional bonus, I'm including an audio training which augments what's provided on the 10 strategy checklist. To get access to this checklist, I invite you to visit www.dissertationstrategy.com or text #free, FREE, to 301-701-2466. Now back to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Ramon Goins, founder of the Done Dissertation program, where we demystify the dissertation process so that doctoral students can write and defend their dissertation in 1 year or less. We have a very special guest today, Ms. Mia Wright, who is the author of Unthinkable, Do the Unordinary to Experience the Extraordinary, and has a career of inspiring people across the globe. And aside from her motivational work, she is currently a doctoral student at the University of Southern California. So let's give it up and let's welcome Mia to the show. Hey, Mia, how you doing?
Hello, Dr. Goins. What a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you for the invitation to join you.
Thank you so much for having you. We're really excited about this conversation, everything that you're going to give us today. And I must say, before we get started, how I found Mia was through Instagram. And I was just looking around for folks that are in doctoral programs doing interesting work. And your profile kept popping up in my searches and various hashtags. So people are very motivated by the work that you're doing. So I'm really excited about this conversation.
That's incredible. Thank you.
And so I guess first, I just want to give you opportunity just to introduce yourself to the audience, tell folks a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do. I'll start there.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the very nice introduction you gave me already. I am a pastor. My husband and I share pastoral duties at the Fountain of Praise in Houston, Texas. I'm a Cali girl living in Texas, and originally born and raised part of my life in California. And then I've been in Texas, in Houston for 30 years. So more than any other time, any other place in my life, I've stayed here. I'm a mom. I have 3 sons. One's a minister, one is a medical doctor, and one's an attorney. So I call myself a super mom. I'm just really grateful to God for their success. And, I'm just a woman who really likes to see people empowered, particularly see women overcome life circumstances, not get stuck, and move forward in their lives.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for your introduction. So, I always tell folks, like, when we see people at the end, right, and they get their doctorates, there's always a story that happens at the beginning that we often don't think about to where people get to today. And so I want to kind of rewind time a little bit and just go back to your educational journey. Like, have you always been interested in school? Like, what pushes you to keep moving forward with your education?
That's a great question. I actually have always been a good student and interested in school. I was sharing with somebody just the other day that I finished all my educational endeavors. So every graduation I've had has been pretty much in mid-year. So when I was in high school, I graduated mid-year, but I didn't walk until the regular class walked in May. And I had already started, while I was in high school, I started taking college courses, which today it's pretty common. You hear a lot of students that are doing that, which is a wonderful opportunity for them to advance and get ahead early. But back then it was not normal for high school students to be in college at the same time. But our school offered some co-enrollment. And so I started college while I was in high school. And then when I finished the University of Texas is where I did my undergraduate, University of Texas at Austin. I started in biology and chemistry. I changed into pharmacy and began pharmacy school. and decided that that journey was not the pathway for me, and went back to chemistry and biology and finished there mid-year again. And then from there, later on in life, as life changed, I went to work in the pharmaceutical industry, and then life changed for me, and I felt this calling to go into ministry. So I went to seminary, which was really a calling to prepare myself for whatever God was going to do, because I had no idea that I would be preaching and teaching the Bible. I just really felt like I would be doing some administrative work. So I just went to learn more, and finished mid-year once again. And then with the program with USC, I just felt that there was something else for me to be doing, that there was something that I needed to do with the leadership capacity that I felt called to do. And I started seeing advertisements with Baylor University and with USC for the leadership programs and organizational change and leadership. And just doing my own research into those different programs, it just led me down a pathway to see that this was probably the best endeavor for me and the best investment of my time and money to really learn more, to build this, as I said, the capacity that was already there, the desire to learn more, just to be able to put some effort behind it. And so I started in the OCL program. It's Organizational Change and Leadership at USC. I started in 2019, and I'll finish in December of 2021. So a few more months.
That's great. That's great. And so, with you doing your doctoral program and you having a spiritual background, how do you see those two connecting, like your spiritual background and what you've been going through throughout your doctoral experience?
It's interesting. So I actually look further back. So I look at my scientific background, because that was a very significant part of my life. And then I look at my spiritual side, and now I'm dealing with more of the cognitive side, the psychological endeavors, the educational side. I see it as a very nice myriad. I see it coming together almost in a Trinity type of format, in which I see body, mind, and spirit coming together. And so for me, it's a very logical connection. I see how one can affect another, and how, each are tied together in some aspect. And it's really funny, Dr. Goings, because I've always said, even when I wrote my book, I know that there is a technical term for some of the things that I'm saying here. And I kept saying, there's got to be another term for this. And so as I was going through my educational program at USC, the light bulb just kept going off. I was like, oh my God, I said this in my book. I didn't know that this was metacognition. Think about what you're thinking about, right? I didn't realize that there was actually a term for this. So I'm learning a lot as an adult student, right? So I'm in my 50s, and I am learning a whole lot about, the educational aspects that I wasn't aware of. And I know there are a lot of educators that have known this stuff. And I'm like, why didn't somebody point me down this pathway years ago? But I'm excited for this moment in time to be on this journey.
And it's so far in the dissertation process, you're almost done with it. What has been your experience so far? And particularly, I will start here. What are the challenges you experience as you're trying to navigate the process? That's a question we often get from a lot of viewers.
I think one of the biggest challenges is making time. Being consistent with my time and being able to study, to comprehend, and then not just understand, but understand, like if we're reading literature papers, understand how that applies to whatever I'm supposed to learn in that moment. So how do I take this literature review and then really apply it to the overall thought of whatever this course is? So that's been kind of the challenge. But then a light bulb actually kind of went off just recently in terms of my dissertation. I'm doing qualitative reviews and a qualitative study. And so I'm doing interviews, and then I'll be coding those particular interviews. Sure. And I shared that what I do professionally as a minister, as a teacher, is that I go to the Bible as my source, as my text. And I'm literally coding that to find, substantive information to make my point. And so it's like, this is exactly what our literature reviews are. This is exactly what our research and coding of those things are. And so once that light bulb went off for me, once I began to really see, you've been doing this your whole professional career, and it wasn't so foreign anymore. It wasn't intimidating any longer, because I was already familiar with it. I just needed to see it in my light, in my aspect of what I've been doing.
No, that's so interesting that you say that. Oftentimes when I teach research methods and I teach doctoral students how to write literature reviews or how to do data analysis, I actually start with children's books, because I find that you can make connections very easy. And like you said, the Bible as a text makes sense because you're always looking through, searching for excerpts, but then you're connecting to larger themes that span across various chapters, various verses. So I'm really glad that you provided another way for folks to kind of think about that. I think it's so important to make it relevant to what you do already.
Exactly. I think, and that would any person that's looking at, say, the literature review, mine was 60 pages. It was a lot of material to really go through. I think my appendix or my references were at least about 4 or 5 pages just for that particular part of my dissertation so far. Just very heavy. And I think it can be intimidating in so many ways. You know, it's like, how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time.
Yeah.
But it's so intimidating. So many people are always saying, you know, just write every day, write something, write. But when you don't know what to write, you can sit there and look at your computer and spend hours just kind of filling in a blank stupor. And so it's good when you can apply what you already know, what you're comfortable with. And so your approach is awesome because it helps people to really connect to the simplicity of it and to see that it is not so intimidating.
No, I'm really glad you mentioned that. And with that, you know, we've talked about some of the experiences about how you had to be very mindful of your time, given that you have all these things, you know, interests competing in many ways to your doctoral work. What has been your approach to actually carving out the time to make sure that you're applying that time to get your dissertation done?
You know, I always feel like something is going to fill your time. Right. And so if you drop out of school, then you'll look back in 3 months and say, I don't know how I was doing school with my schedule as it is because I'm so busy or I'm so full. You know, I'm not just, no one sits at home bored. Most people don't. There's just a lot of things that will take your time. So you have to learn to have some harmony in your time. I don't believe in balance. I got rid of balance years ago. There's no such thing as balance. So I don't know. I hope I'm not throwing you off.
No.
People to balance your time. It just never worked for me, you know. Personally, I try to balance, you know, that is not getting the appropriate time. That, you know, balance is a matter. Some things require more time, things require less time and priority. And so I have the time or make the time necessary to do what I need to do. And so I take a week. Or if it means I take half a day off, or, you know, not everybody's at liberty to take half a day of work in the evening. Whatever you do, you can't decide the time, you have to take the time. So you take time. What is necessary?
And Mia, we lost you for a little bit there. Just to let you know, in the midst of that.
Those years ago, yes, either way, people who are doing it. Oh, am I having a problem?
Yeah, it's a little delayed.
It's a little delayed.
Yeah, it was a little delayed. We got cut up a little bit in there.
Oh, rats. Okay. Okay, well, talk for 1 second and we do my IT for one moment.
No problem.
No,
it's still in and out, still choppy on our side from what I can see. Hey, it's Dr. Ramon Goins with the Done Dissertation. And look, I know you're enjoying the episode, but I want to tell you real quick about the Done Dissertation. We are demystifying the dissertation process so that doctoral students can complete their entire dissertation in 1 year or less. With that, I want to invite you to learn more about the Velocity Group Coaching Program, which is a 4-month group coaching program that provides doctoral students the support to either write and defend their dissertation proposal or write and finish up their dissertation in the next 4 months. And you heard that right. Our students in our program are finishing in the next 4 months. If you've gone through the dissertation process alone and become very frustrated with the lack of support from your advisor and not having a support structure in terms of students in your program, we want to provide that structure for you and provide you the written feedback and support to know exactly what your professors are looking for when they read your dissertation. To learn more about the Velocity Group Coaching Program, visit www.velocitydissertation.com or text #Velocity to 301-701-2466. Now back to the show. Well, as Mia gets, we're having a little technical difficulty, but I do want to chime in on what Mia was just talking about around time. Oftentimes, as busy doctoral students, as you mentioned, you have to carve out and make the time, and that sometimes balance is something that is very difficult or doesn't exist at all. So we always have to be mindful of what we do. And when people ask me, what is the number one barrier to dissertation completion? Without a doubt, Mia touched on it perfectly, is that it's time. I find that time is the biggest barrier to completing. And I wanted to ask you all, what do you all think about in terms of your time? Make sure you can drop us a note as we're doing this live. So if you have an insight or something you want to share, please feel free to do so. We're going to bring Mia back on.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm on a hard wire now, so hopefully
no worries.
This will
Perfect.
hold.
No, this is perfect. But thank you so much. We were talking about time and how you talked about how time, the balance doesn't exist. You learned quickly that there's no balance.
I call it harmony now. So
harmony.
Yeah, I try to find the joyful. It's almost the yin and yang of time. That some things that need more time, that require more time in my life in that moment, that I'm able to appropriate that time for it, and then other things that I can put aside for the time being. Some things have to take a back step, and it's not a bad thing in life to take that moment to just kind of reset in some other areas and take a pause. I think people come back stronger. They come back in a better position, and others are ready to hear from them. Sometimes if we're just kind of going along and just giving a mediocre presentation, it's better to just pause and come back where you're more educated, you have a better perspective and a better handle on it. So it's not a bad thing to take some time away from other things to give what is more necessary at that time, the greater amount of time.
Yeah, and if you think about in the grand scheme of things, right? Doctoral programs, if you do it the right way, let's say on a short end, 2 to 3 years, long end, 5 years, if you really focus, depending on your program, I think we all can dedicate a little bit of time because we just know the reward at the end of it is so great.
Exactly.
It's just a moment in time. Just so people tell your family and friends, it's just a moment in time. I need to finish this and then I can move on. And we actually have a comment from someone who's actually watching live, and it's Jakina Stone says, despite working full-time, part-time, and being a part-time student, I have time to work on my PhD. I just don't always have the energy.
I understand. I understand. And it's those late nights that seem to be so draining. But I think the other thing is understanding where's your most productive time and how you can really get into that. And what's the setting for your productivity? Chapter 2 was it was very draining for me. And I almost kind of dredged, I'm dragging myself to get in front of the computer to try and meet this deadline. But then I realized that my productive time was between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., which is crazy. Most people are asleep.
Much respect to you.
But that for me, I actually discovered house music during this time. And there's Christian house music. I found some YouTubes, and that music would keep me pumping. And I would just be writing, and I wouldn't even hear the music playing. I could just feel the beat, and it was just inspiring me and moving me and giving me energy when I normally would be asleep too. But it was giving me what I needed. And the whole setting, having the air conditioning at the right temperature, having the light at the right temperature, not having interruptions from anyone else in my family at the time, shutting down a whole lot of other apps, not having email up or messages or Instagram, any of that, just really focusing, being able to focus. But that music really drove me too. So I think just that helped me with my energy. And so hopefully, Jakina, you'll find the right energy or the right setting to push your energy and help you push through.
That's so great. And you actually led into a question I normally ask everyone: what's on your writing playlist? And so house music is on yours. I know for me, I needed and I still do this. I needed instrumental hip hop music. So it'd be popular songs, but just a jazz version of them. And so whereas I wouldn't be typing the words in, because I found that when I had music with words, I would end up typing them in my paper because I'm listening and typing. But I'm glad you found kind of your rhythm, that 10 to 2. So you're on the late side. I'm a morning. I only could do 9 to 11:30 a.m. The late night until I had my 2-year-old daughter. Then I had to learn about late nights. That was the only time I had. But before that, what made you decide on that? Was that something you just found and you tried other times, or was that just something that always just felt right in terms of getting work done?
I've always kind of considered myself a late owl, and in my career path, I've often had multiple positions. So one of the things that I also do, in addition to everything else, is that I lead a women's empowerment organization called Metamorphosis. And with Metamorphosis, we held conferences and events. And so a lot of my communication would be preset or sent out to my team in the middle of the night. So they would say, Mia, did you go to sleep today? But I know I'm not a morning person. So my phone is on do not disturb until 9 a.m. So Don't call in the morning. It's like, don't call in the morning. My brain isn't on fire yet. It's like, I'm not really just thinking. I remember taking an 8 a.m. course in school in my undergrad. And I was like, why am I here? I couldn't even, it was like they were just teaching me Greek. And it was something that I could understand, but I just couldn't understand. So just knowing my circadian rhythm is that I just am more of an evening person, more afternoon. I often tell people I work the second shift. And so just put me on the second shift because, I feel my sense of energy then. And then at nighttime, it just happened to be the time when I can really kind of shut down everything else from my day and say, okay, I don't have to give anything else attention, just me. This is me right now. I didn't have to worry about the television being on or phone calls or anything. So I could focus clearly in that hour.
Have you been going through your doctoral program just so frustrated and you're finally ready to be done? Are you tired of spending thousands of dollars in dissertation seminar credits and not having a degree to show for it? Are you tired of spending hours and hours reading through the literature and not having any progress? Are you tired of spending hours and hours of time away from your family? If this is you, I want you to get my book, 14 Secrets to a Done Dissertation, as I provide a proven framework and strategy to navigate the dissertation in record time. In the book, I share how to create a writing schedule that gets your dissertation chapters done in 1 month. I also share how to select committee members and then how to structure yourself and navigate the process so that you have the littlest headache as possible. And again, if you're tired of going back and forth with your professors trying to get through the process, I want to give you the strategy to finish in record time. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to visit our website, www.thedonedissertation.com/14 secrets to grab your copy of 14 Secrets to a Done Dissertation. Now back to the show. No, that's great. And what I want to jump back on into your dissertation, because we talked about the process and what it's been like for you so far, but if you could tell folks a little bit about what your actual study is about, that way they can get in more context for everything else that you mentioned today so far.
Okay. Well, I'm really excited that the Rossier School of Education at University of Southern California is offering, it's a educational degree in organizational change and leadership. And so it's really looking at how we use evidence-based decision-making in order to make changes within our organizations. And so my dissertation is actually on the use of technology in the community, the church community and the religious community. And so before COVID, I had already decided that I would be looking into see how we use the online platforms to build community and how people connect with one another. As we know, church traditionally has been in person on Sunday morning at a certain time, but over the last couple decades, actually, church has been really growing in the online space. And so within the African American church context, I think a lot of pastors had not really embraced it early on. And many felt like, oh, we'll lose members if they go online. They're not coming to church anymore. They're going to stay and watch it on their phone or in their home on their laptops. And so without realizing the value of this communication tool of how we can actually reach out around the world to people in video on demand, using video on demand or using Facebook groups or Instagram groups, et cetera, or WhatsApp groups, we can build community because the church really is built around people networking with one another. So in particular, my research is really how do we build the social capital within our virtual religious communities. So the things that we know about church, right, is that most of us know somebody. If you grew up in church, you knew people who were in your Sunday school class or in your small groups class or in the choir with you. And perhaps someone has introduced you to someone based on something that you needed. For example, my children at one time were going into a private school and the wait list was so long that they weren't going to get in for that school year. And I knew two people that had children in this school. And so I went to them to ask them, how did they get their children into the school? They introduced me to the administrator and we were able to jump the list.
Yeah, no, I know that. Yep.
Jump the list a little bit. And so, it's like who you know, right? So who do you know? Who do you know and who knows whom? And who can introduce you and help you within the network that they know of people? Do you know a mechanic on Sundays? My car breaks down on a Sunday. What am I going to do? Do you know somebody? And that's what we do in the church. We help each other. We reach out. And within not just the church, but within all of our networks or groups, whether it's a Greek organization or a community organization or church, we help each other based on whom we know. And so how do we build that community online as well? Because people are now not necessarily in Sunday school class. They can be, but they are not seeing people online. They're seeing people they're not seeing people offline as much as they're seeing them online. So how do we build our sense of community? So that's what I'm looking at in particular. And I'm in chapter 4. It's a 5-chapter dissertation. So chapter 4 is being able to take the interviews that I have and code that data and share out my findings. And so right now we're still doing interviews. Okay. And then we'll start the coding process and then set our findings. And then the last chapter to write is what that findings implicate and how we can move forward with this type of information to share as we build forward and what else could come from this.
Yeah, so you're in the midst of data collection, right? So you're one of my guests that's in a unique spot. I haven't talked to someone like in the midst of collecting data right now. And so what has that process been like for you in terms of the impact of COVID on data collection? And then how have you gone about, getting people to be interested in your study? And then what have you learned so far actually doing the data collection versus what you thought was going to happen when you wrote up your proposal?
You know what? So I've only done a couple of interviews so far, and it has been a smooth sailing so far. I'm starting to look back now at those interviews to see what tools need to be sharpened a little bit in terms of my skills to ask the appropriate questions and make sure that I'm pulling out the right, I'm getting, complete data. So the more data, the better in terms of being able to go back and identify themes that will come from that. So it has been interesting getting more people interested in studies because people are like, give you an hour of my time. Time is precious. And so we have an incentive for them to be able to participate. But we're actually looking at super users within our Facebook group. And there are people who are already consistently on the internet. They're in Facebook. They're regular posters. They're super sharers. We want to know what are their motivations. And then also what are the benefits in terms of their network build or their social capital that is developed through that. And then also we'll be looking at from the church perspective or organizational end, how does that benefit the organization? Because, there are times the organization may say, we need 100 volunteers to show up today. And, this human resource, we can't manufacture that. We can only ask and people can come out, and because of the network that they have and the commitment they have to the church and to others, they'll come out and show up for that particular thing. So we want to see how this network that is built within the Facebook groups help motivate people into action. And so I think it's just been interesting just to hear different reasons why people are motivated to participate in that group and what they feel they gain by being a part of it. And then how we can take that information, that's going to be the critical part is how do we take that information and be able to substantiate the findings? Is it beneficial for groups to have certain types of motivators, to help people to get connected? So that's the information that I'd like to be able to share with other organizations, not just churches, but other organizations, particularly while COVID-19 is happening, because about 99.9% of churches went to virtual during this time. And the question is, how are people connecting with one another? And I think that's been a critical point for a lot of churches, a lot of organizations, although we all have Zoom and we have access to other platforms that let us talk to one another in a digital format. Sure. How do people really still connect? So they can be there, but they may not connect.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what you find. Like you said, there's implications for other types of organizations that are similarly switching over to a virtual environment. So that's great that you mentioned that.
And Dr. Goins, you know what? I feel like this virtual environment isn't going anywhere. It's going to be, it's here to stay. It's here to stay. For a lot of people, it is the convenience of what they have experienced. They are really solid with this is comfortable for me, and it's very convenient. I can do this from anywhere. So a lot of people will continue in an online environment.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Before this, I was, because I run the Velocity Group coaching program now, and maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I was doing one-on-one dissertation coaching with students like yourself, and I was all about being in person. I thought that the magic happened when we were in person, and then having the shift to online, initially I was like, this is not going to work, and then I'm like, that was the dumbest thing I ever could have thought, because now I'm like, wait a minute, I can reach more people. Like in my program, I have people from California to New York. I literally meeting with someone from Canada tomorrow, like to talk about being in the program. Had I not thought about converting to online, I would have missed out on all that reach that I possibly could have had.
That's so true. And they would have missed out on you and the value that you bring to their research projects. And so, yes, we were, the OCL program is online. And so we were already a year and a half into on Zoom before COVID actually hit. And so we were all of us that were in the program were quite familiar with the platform and with, how we're able to communicate, use this as an awesome tool to communicate. And I think this has also been a benefit for a lot of people at our church as well. So we're hoping that for those that continue to stay in a virtual environment, that they will connect even to a greater proportion.
That's great. And I have a comment from actually one of my doctoral students at UMBC, Shaheen Hussein. He says, I also think focus is the key and also the right setting. I think it was in regards to when you're talking about where do you write and that types of thing. Yeah, it says, thanks, Ms. Wright. Dr. Goins also says, just to get things started. I think that's great advice. Often we procrastinate. And yeah, I think that's a big piece. Like during your process so far, have you gotten to any, I know you mentioned chapter 2 was some pretty tough to write. Did you ever get to a point like, I don't even know what to do with this, and I'm going to pause?
I think that's my chapter 1.
Okay, all right.
It's like, oh my God, how do you even start? And to be honest with you, I think my chapter 1 is probably my weakest chapter right now, and it will be totally revised. It'll be completely revised. I already know that, and I wanted to wait until after chapter 4 before I go back to revise it. But I do know this, that my chapter 2 is solid, and each person on my dissertation chair, as well as my committee members, were all very highly impressed. Like, this is a solid chapter. So I know I put the time into it. I know I put the effort into it. And another thing that I just want to share that I do, and this is me, because I work off of a calendar with my phone, bells and whistles, right? Yeah. So if I don't put stuff on my calendar, like I said, something else is going to fill that time. Something else is going to occupy my time or my attention. And so I intentionally, for chapter 2, during that time I was writing, I intentionally blocked periods of time. Like, this day it's writing, this day it's writing. And so I would get reminders all throughout the day, writing. So I started to put into my spirit, into my mind, my process, to prepare myself. You're writing today. You're writing today. You're writing today. So when it came time for me to say, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'd have a cup of tea. I just would set the setting, the atmosphere that was good for me, so that I could be prepared to write. But all day long, I have been pondering. You're writing. And I wasn't pondering from a negative perspective, because this is part of our metacognition. I think this is where this is important, where we do think about the things that we are thinking about. And if we're always approaching like, oh my God, I have to write. Oh my God, I have to. And it's always from a negative aspect, something so emotional and draining, that when you sit down to approach the writing in that time, that's what you're going to sense. That emotion that you've been drawing and manufacturing all day long is what you're going to sense when it's that moment for you to sit down and write. And so I started to prepare myself almost in a very positive manner, in the sense of, you're writing today. You're writing today. So I'm affirming myself all day long. You're writing. Tonight is going to be the night. It's like, it's coming together tonight. And honestly, there were times that I would just sit there and I'm kind of wondering, what in the world am I writing about? But once I began to organize my thoughts, and the table of contents, I believe you're probably teaching along, writing out an outline. Sure. I set mine as a table of content. And once I started doing that, I had a clearer perspective of it all. And in fact, once I finished chapter 2, I thought I need to go back and rewrite chapter 1, but I had to get chapter 3 done.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, most people don't think about it. In my book, I have a book, 14 Secrets to a Done Dissertation. And in the book, I give people strategy on how to navigate the process. And that's the first thing I say is, like, just dedicate a little bit of time every day to writing, because you literally can write a couple of pages in, say, a 30 to 60 minute time frame. Those couple of pages add up over a week. You might have 5 pages. Look at a month, 20 pages. You're at a chapter. And people don't think it can happen that fast. But I think when you add it on to, if we think those positive thoughts about writing, it kind of manifests itself in our action.
It absolutely does.
And so with that, What advice would you give for doctoral students who are just like struggling and trying to figure out how to get through this process? They're just stuck and they don't know what to do. What advice would you give for some students out there?
I think the thing that you just said is just sit and write something, put something down. They say a good dissertation is a done dissertation.
Indeed.
So when somebody helped me with that, and I was like, oh my God, really? And, it's not always A plus, 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 plus. And, for many people that are in these programs, we are very strong-willed, highly intellectual, driven people. And we want to present our very best at all times. You have time to revise it. You have time to go back. But get going. And so in order to really motivate yourself to get going, just really start to think in a positive manner that this is something that you can do. And this is something that you're capable of doing. And so just do it. It's like the Nike motto. It never gets old. It's just do it. Don't, if you're procrastinating, and I tend to be a person that says, I work really good under the gun. I don't like to call myself a procrastinator, but I work really good under pressure, really good under the gun. But if that is so, then set yourself a shorter timeline and say, okay, this week I want 3 pages written. And that is your then goal. And if you want to be under the gun, write those 3 pages. So
that's interesting that you approach it that way, because I'm like the opposite. I need this thing to be planned out so that, say it's due on Friday, I have it done Tuesday, so I can just revise by Friday and I'm not rushing. But that makes sense. You like to go right to like Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, Thursday night. Do Friday morning, Thursday night. I'm still working on it. Yeah. But, I can set, and I do. And as I've gone through the program, I found it even better for myself when I put in my calendar all the due dates. I put the due dates in ahead of time now so that it's not actually due on the day that it shows in my calendar. It's due, a couple days later. But I give myself a little bit of more flex time with that so that I can meet my initial goal, which is my preset goal, and then have time to review it before I send it in. Perfect. That's helping me meet some deadlines. Yeah.
No, that's perfect. And so as we're coming towards the end, I want to talk about your book. And so can you tell us about your book and who is it made for and what gave you the idea to write it?
Oh, that's awesome. I have a copy of it here. So yay, in my library.
Yes,
so it's called Unthinkable. And the reason why I wrote this book was I actually knew that I wanted to write something. And I just kept saying, again, like writing a dissertation, how do I get started? What do I start with? And so a publisher actually approached me and asked me if I had ever thought about writing. And I was like, yes. So I had previously written a book that was kind of somewhat of an autobiography. And I was really uncomfortable with that. And I told them, I'm not really comfortable with this. And they said, are these your words? I'm like, yes, it's my words. These are my stories, my history. And I wrote this, I'm like, but I'm not really comfortable sharing it in this way. So when I gave them that copy, they were like, oh, I think we have something else. Let's try something else. And so I have 2 other books that I was writing at the time. And Unthinkable was just an idea at that point. But I had outlined different biblical characters, women and men in the Bible whose stories I connected to. They had done something unthinkable. And as I began to write it out, it was like what they believed, what they did, and what was the outcome. And so I have 10 stories, and this book is really for anyone who is looking for something to push them into a next realm of living. And so it means getting out beyond your comfort zone. Although I use biblical stories, they're historical accounts of people who lived, who did something, that their stories are recorded in the Bible, but they did something. So it's not just limited to Christians. It's for any person that would really like to say, I want to push the envelope for my life, and I want to do something bigger and something different. There were people who were told that this has never been done before. There were people who were told that a woman can't be in this place. There were people who were told that you had to be in silence or in quiet space. And yet they did something that was beyond the boundary for what they knew at that time. And because of their actions, not only do we have an account of their story, but there was something that happened in their lives and to other people's lives because of what they did. And so the book is available on Amazon. It is with Charisma House Publishers and was published in 2019. And it has done very well. I'm really very grateful for it. But it just really just helps people to think beyond what is ordinary to do something extraordinary.
Yeah. And so what I want to do is if we can relate your book to the dissertation process. So what's something unthinkable and the unordinary that doctoral students can do to surmount this feat of finishing the dissertation process?
Well, I think the first thing is time, that a lot of people don't think they have time. I think a lot of people don't believe that they have the energy to do this or the resource to do it. I promise you, I have, even some of my classmates, I have listened to their stories of, I don't know where this money is going to come from. And me personally, I was actually paying for my dissertation program through my speaking engagements. Well, when COVID hit, all those speaking engagements that were in person, they all died out. Yeah. So it was like, okay, where's this money going to come from? But I have watched God make a way. The money and the time are two things that are just resources that we can't always be in control of. But yet there is an opportunity if you trust and believe and watch something unthinkable. In my case, it's been, people pouring into me and saying, hey, I want to make sure that you finish this program. So it's been amazing to see what I thought would not happen, what I never could think would happen, the resource of either one, the time or the money, where it's going to come from, but it has come from somewhere. And so just, relaying that into the dissertation itself. Being able to do what I'm doing right now, at this stage of my life, I am just utterly amazed. I keep thinking, oh, I got to be the oldest person in class. I'm not, but but sometimes I feel like it. And I feel like, oh, am I getting this? Am I understanding this? Am I too old to do this? And then I read about somebody's story, like a 89 or 90-year-old woman who got her undergrad or got her PhD. And I'm like, I can do this. It's like, go. I can do this. And so, believing in yourself is part of it, having faith into anything that you can do, believing if you are a person of faith that God can help you. If you don't have faith, then believing in yourself or whatever higher authority that you may sense. I just believe that God will, that whatever higher power or energy that helps you will continue to help you in this stage of life.
That's great. That's great. And with that, what's next for you? So this program, you say you're almost close to finishing. We're projecting, Dr. Wright around December. So what does life look like after the dissertation and after you have your letters?
Yeah. Well, actually would like to do a little bit more consulting. Okay. And so right now, as I do consulting with organizations or with churches, it is more so in the speaking realm, but I really will be able to come in from a different perspective now to share a lot more of the administrative side. I have, with Metamorphosis, I have said for years that I was going to 20 years of doing women's conferences, very successful women's conferences. And so one of the things that I had intended to do, and I just didn't have time to do it then, but I will have more time afterwards, is to share with others about putting on conferences for conference developers. So how do we do this? And then now having a little bit more information on perhaps hybrid or online. How do we do this effectively in certain groups? And so I'm just looking to do more consulting with that and have an opportunity to share the learnings out. And I'm going to rest. I'm going to disappear and go out of the country for a month at least.
Oh, I know that's right. Yeah. When you're done, it's like, oh gosh, thank God. So, even though you have ideas and things you want to do forward, but it's nice to have a break for a second.
Oh yeah. I'm going to take that break too. And I'm going to enjoy it.
That's great. And so as we conclude, where can people find you on social media and keep up with everything that you have going on?
Oh, I should have renamed myself. Internet, but you can find me on my website. It's miawright.com. Or if you'd like to find me in my church organization, it's the Fountain of Praise. You just Google it, or it's the letters tfop.org. And through my women's empowerment organization, it's metamorphosis.org.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Mia, for joining us today. I want to put you backstage for a quick second as we wrap up. Then I want to chat with you for a quick second, but thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Done Dissertation Office Hours. I'm your host, Dr. Ramon Goings, founder of the Done Dissertation, where we demystify the dissertation process so that doctoral students can write and defend their dissertation in 1 year or less. As we wrap up today's show, I want you to take some insights from me from today to make sure that you put them forward. In particular, I want you to start thinking about time and how to use time and be more effective with your time and have harmony in your life so that you know that you're dedicating a little bit of time now and sacrificing time right now for a big reward at the end of this. And with that, I want to provide you all some insights as well and some free material that you can use to get through the dissertation. So if you need support to get through, I want to provide you with our 10 strategies to dissertation completion checklist. It provides clear-cut strategies for you to get through the dissertation process with as minimal headache as possible. And so to get this, you can text hashtag free, FREE, to 301-701-2466. And again, you can text hashtag free to 301-701-2466. I want to say again, thank you so much for tuning in to Done Dissertation Office Hours. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Be sure to subscribe to our Done Dissertation YouTube page and follow us on Instagram and Facebook.